All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cash and Sport. It's a Tuesday afternoon. The Paralympics started this morning, so it's going to be late nights and early mornings for some of us. Last week, we touched on the Olympics and wrapped that up nicely. There was an issue around the DSD athletes, and we thought that was going to be quiet for a little while, but wow, World Athletics and the British Institute for, what's that British Institute? Anyway, they came out with a redaction or walk back basically on the Caster Semenya issue. So we'll take a look at that. There's a couple of other things going on in terms of local football. There's some NFT. We'll explain what NFTs are and what they have to do with sport. But yeah, there's been a lot going on with the DSD athletes issue in the Olympics. Fast forward, it's come back again now, straight into focus again. What's going on with, this British investigation that happened and basically kind of paved the way for Caster Semenya and DSD athletes being excluded from certain races in athletics?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because so the paper that was under discussion amongst other papers in the CAS case, they've come out and said we're retracting certain elements of the paper and stuff. Yeah. But when you dive deeper into it, you understand that one, as journalists and media, people need to do more reading and more understanding of the subject. And a disclaimer here, we read what we read and we research on this podcast, and we urge people to also do their research, but we will bring in more people who know what they're doing, and we'll touch on that just now. But the fundamental part is, so Guardian comes up, says the paper that was one of the bases for how CAS got to their case is being retracted and put certain parts of it. But people that know of that case go, hang on, this was discussed in the case. The lawyers knew about it. The scientists in the case knew about it, and CAS still went on to make the decision they make. So, in my notes here, I've got, if you look at the actual, every CAS case has got the whole breakdown and the whole case and the whole paperwork associated with it on the website. So on this one, if you go look at the papers, point 523, 524, 525 are key to read, that actually this was ventilated at length and was discussed. The likes of Ross Tucker and other scientists asked for the data to be brought, and they understood that some of the data and the way it was collected and the way it was, you can't just deduce certain stuff in science and when you do your research. So they poked holes at this long ago. So now when it comes up, we're all up in arms because it's the first time we've heard it in the media. But when you actually do the research, hence a lot of people going, on a legal perspective, it might not make a fundamental difference. Where Caster's case is still strong, actually, is, actually I'm saying Caster's case, but it's a DSD policy case, and then she's leading the fight.
Well, she's leading the case.
It's still
and the fight,
Her case is still strong on human rights. So the route that she's fighting now is still actually strong on human rights, and she can still actually win that on a basis of medical ethics as well. Because that whole. So I try not get my hopes up in terms of CAS and this one, because it just infuriates me that it had to get to that and how it got to that. So I think for me, I hope Caster's really fighting hard and pursuing the human rights one, because it will frame a lot of things, how we discuss things, how we frame athletes, and it's a big win for humanity, I guess, on a human rights level. But that said, it is crucial. I mean, for you and I, who did not know that it was ventilated, we looked at that article and everyone was like, "Oh, this is key." But I think, there's a lot of it brings a different layer to it, so that then what was World Athletics case strong on that it went that direction? Those are the questions we should be asking. Apparently,
and on what basis?
Strong on.
And on what basis do you decide?
That's exactly that. On a theoretical case, it was quite strong, but not on a data research case. So those are kind of things we need to weigh up and be like, actually, CAS heard both arguments, what happened to the other argument that it was weak, that or lacked substance, that CAS sided with World Athletics. That would be quite an
and on what
interesting
basis
discussion.
does CAS make a decision? Is it based on scientific, fact, or is it based on theoretical argument? Because if athletes are being banned for doping, and it says that your passport, it says you have this much milligrams of testosterone or whatever in your blood, it's based on science.
Yeah.
So then how can you as an organization then say, well, World Athletics will allow for you guys to come and make a theoretical argument, and we'll take your theoretical argument over the junk science, and say that your junk science, because honestly, let's be honest, the science was not really based on fact. And we'll take that as a reason.
Yeah, it had
still,
loopholes. The data had loopholes.
Yeah.
So I think it must be, just to throw it in here, we through certain discussions you've been having, someone who's close to this case has offered his services to come to the podcast just to explain it on a human level, on a layman level, to say, this is where we've come from 2012. This is how this case has progressed over the years, and this is where we're at in 2021.
Yeah, so hopefully very soon we'll have a scientist on here who's well-renowned, well-known, and he's been central to a number of other cases, with regards to this, and he's written for many publications. We won't talk about it right now because we don't want to raise your hopes up high, but we're working on a very big discussion around this issue, so we can be ventilated properly, and we'll have a scientific explanation as to exactly what happened here and what could possibly happen in the future, because this is a landmark situation that we're in now. There's a lot that could potentially happen in the future depending on where things go. But let's move on.
Yeah, and Caster always says it's not about her. It's bigger than her, and that's what I like about her, is that she's never going to give up the fight because she knows that it's bigger than her.
Yeah, it has so many implications for all sorts of different sporting codes, and we'll definitely keep an eye on this one. On the sports business side, there is very few places in the world or things in the world that could match South African football. It's amazing. It's amazing. Last week we spoke about the status sale and how Bloemfontein Celtic was bought and how players were told, on the day that they need to drive to Maritzburg. Well, we thought everything is calm and relaxed. Well, there's a situation now going on in Free State where a businessman, his name is Lebo Mokoena, he's based in Durban, but he's a Free Stater by birth, and he comes from Bloemfontein. He then goes and has a rally, a full-blown rally, people are out there, and he says to them, no, we're coming back to the PSL. Bloemfontein Celtic is coming back to the PSL. And by the way, Bloemfontein Celtic, because there was a lot of confusion last week, Bloemfontein Celtic wasn't bought by the Mkhize family or Royal AM. They bought the status.
No.
So Bloemfontein Celtic still exists, but they're now back down in the lower divisions. So now for them to get back into the PSL, they need to buy a status. So Lebo Mokoena
work themselves up.
Yeah, or work themselves up. But you know how South African football is. Or work themselves up. But he said, we are buying, or we're in the process of buying a status, and then people link that to Maritzburg United because there've been rumors about Maritzburg going under. So now we don't know what's going on. Could we have potentially another team coming back into the PSL and players from Maritzburg being shifted over to Bloemfontein?
He was very aggrieved. I heard another article that the Maritzburg United guys mentioned him in their statement. They mentioned him in their status, saying, I didn't say I'm going to buy Maritzburg United. That was Twitter doing its own linking. I didn't say. He says there's an intention to buy a team, whatever his team or his status. But where it becomes funny is that he's a Bloem guy. He's got ties to Bloemfontein. So why didn't he he's always known that Bloem Celtics has got an appetite to sell with the right buyer because the family could no longer afford the team. So why didn't he just go that route? Now you've gone three ways to end up, but you've gone from A to B to C to land up at C, where you could have just gone directly to C, actually.
Yeah, so
that's what I'm questioning in this whole thing.
Yeah, so there's a rumor, and we won't hop on too much about rumors, but there is a rumor apparently that they Royal AM were going to come into the league by hook or by crook regardless. And Bloemfontein Celtic was struggling to a point where it was basically agreed that Mkhize was going to buy Bloemfontein Celtic, regardless of who wanted it, because she wanted to be in the PSL. And regardless of anything else that was going to happen, she was always going to buy Bloemfontein Celtic, regardless of who else was around. And it's funny, actually, that
she was going to buy a status, because it's willing buyer, willing seller. She was going to buy a status. But my question is that, then why wasn't there 2 buyers up for auction? If
absolutely,
also wanted in.
Yeah, because in the PSL's document, right, I read the document around status sale, and they say what they first try to do is speak to the owner and see if they can't find ways for the team to stay in the province or to stay afloat. Then after that, they start to help the owner to look for owners within the province so that you keep the team in the province. But here's a guy who was saying, well, he wanted to buy Bloemfontein Celtic in the past. He had been apparently assisting Max Chabalala with funding, and then you go and sell the team to someone in Pietermaritzburg. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense.
So, and that's a beauty. This thing about South African football is like, who do you believe?
Yeah.
People come on to interviews on different platforms and say one thing. So until we've got a letterhead from the Premier Soccer League in South Africa to say that this transaction has gone on and has been approved, we'll wait till that day, I guess.
Yeah, it's always going to be
we don't know what team he's interested in, or what status he's interested in buying.
Yeah, but anyway, there was another little update that happened literally under 2 hours ago, so I'm going to have to read it. The disciplinary hearing on Royal AM, which has now changed status to TTM, which is in the Clad Africa Championship, for them absconding from 4 matches. There is a fine which has been levied, 4 million rand for each game. So 4 games that they absconded, 1 million rand each. The fine is, however, suspended by 700,000 rand per game. So in essence, they only have to pay 1.2 million rand as a fine. Okay. And then on top of that, and then on top of that, they're docked 12 points. But again, that's a suspended sentence. So contingent, depending on, as long as they don't, abscond from any matches or fall foul of the rules within the next 12 months or 2 years in terms of the fine, slap on the wrist, 1.2 million, that's it, it's done. And that fine...
So as a layman to soccer in South Africa, let's say, who's docked 12 points?
Well, it would have been Royal AM, but Royal AM sold their status. So now the team that bought the status is now the one that's been docked 12 points, but the docking of 12 points is suspended for 12 months.
I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
Those are Sans, you're asking the wrong person. I would love to understand the rationale behind it, because Royal AM, as they exist now, and the Mkhize family are basically the centerpiece of this whole thing, but essentially they've sold their liability to someone else by selling their status to someone else, which to me doesn't make sense, because it's like you cause a ruckus, you put the whole league into disrepute, and then you buy yourself out by buying a status of someone else. And
then you leave that mess behind as well.
You leave that mess behind to other people too. And then now also, all of their Royal AM players are not playing, because if you look at the teams that Royal AM has put out, it's all been Bloemfontein Celtic teams.
Bloemfontein players,
So
they've got a right to do that, and that's always the thing is you take over the contracts of the players from the team that you bought the status from, but you're not obliged to use any of those players. You can take over the So it's been interesting. It's tragic. I feel aggrieved, obviously, as a player, but it's nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah, true. But anyway, let's move on from this football. It's a lot. Moving on to continental football now. there's going to be a Women's Champions League in African football. Apparently, a senior member of CAF was quoted as saying last week that if a team wants to participate in CAF Champions League football, they have to have a corresponding women's team. Now, this makes sense to me because CAF and Patrice Motsepe have spoken about how they wanted to have a CAF Champions League for women's football, and they want to grow the women's game on the continent. So this is going to be very interesting. There are only 3 sides, and Bloemfontein Celtic was one of them. There were only 3 sides in South African football, top tier football in terms of the 2 top divisions, that actually had a women's team. Kaizer Chiefs doesn't have one, Orlando Pirates doesn't have one, Sundowns does, but the rest, Cape Town City, etc., they don't have women's teams.
This is great, and unfortunately it has to come to this point because federations and governing bodies say, invest in women's sport, make sure you start doing that, and it's not taken seriously. So until there comes a time that you force a hand and you affect the men's side of the game, then it's like, okay, let's wake up. Are we buying a team already existing? Are we investing in a team? Are we starting a team? What's the easiest, or what's in our strategic plan going forward? And is it fair? I don't care really, but I'm glad it's happening, because at some point certain people's hands need to be forced to take the game seriously in the women's game, because the women's game in Africa, and I've worked across different countries in the space, it can grow. There's room for it. There are leagues. It is a way out for a lot of goals from certain other plights in the world, I guess, if I could put it like that. But it's there. It's not, you're not starting something new. Women's football is being played across the continent. Now invest in it. You've got a responsibility to do that.
Yeah. And on top of that, as much as people may see it as a cost, women's football in terms of viewership numbers is skyrocketing globally. The Women's World Cup, the women's football at the Olympics, you're starting to see the numbers come up, because just when you start putting money into it, the level increases. It's for one, they're much more exciting. They score a lot more goals. It's much more entertaining to watch than men's football, where they just cancel each other out. And you have to think that Patrice Motsepe is behind the wheel. It's happening under his watch, and he's saying, no, it can't be that African teams just sit back and watch. And we have to get these, we have to get our football, up to an international standard where our women's teams can compete against, the Swedens and the USAs and China's and stuff of this world.
Netherlands. No, 100%. And I can't wait till a point where sponsors are starting to, muscle around with their money and say, guys, I'll give you X, but I'll give you 2X if you've got a women's football program around this as well. And then we can share the costs and stuff, and you can build one facility that you can share with your women's teams and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting. I think the space has got lots of room for growth, and one we're going to watch closely.
And talking about a space that's got lots of room for growth and nobody knows really what's happening. NFTs. Do you know what NFTs are, Sans? These
I do.
New age.
I do, because new age kids. I actually, because of Tom Brady. Tom Brady started investing in them. Then Alexis Ohanian, Serena's husband, is a big player in them. And then yesterday, the big one, Visa is recognizing NFTs. So as a, if lack of a better word, a currency or a platform or a trading. So they, this discussion was the Reserve banks don't know how to deal with it. The banks aren't too sure. When Visa goes, we are in, it's huge. It's a huge thing. So let's go back. Let me ask you, let's go back. What are NFTs? Okay,
so NFTs, let's go back a little bit so people understand. So there's Bitcoin, right? People know what Bitcoin is. It's a cryptocurrency store of value. Competing alongside Bitcoin, because all of these cryptocurrencies do different things, is Ethereum. Ethereum is another cryptocurrency, but within Ethereum, within the Ethereum blockchain, it allows you to do certain things, right? Now, an NFT is a non-fungible token in that you can't exchange it or dilute the value of that token. So what has started happening is that certain individuals started figuring out, there was a couple of months ago, a few months ago, people started selling NFT art, you know, or these funny little art things, which are like digital art. And people were like, okay, but what's
the collectibles as well now?
Collectible arts, or coins. And people didn't really understand what was going on with that. But essentially what it allows you to do is that you peg a certain amount of value to a thing, right? And with NFTs, especially in the way that they're now starting to work with what we're going to talk about now, is that you can assign an NFT to me as an individual. This will be a NABS NFT, right? And as my value grows as an individual, the value of the NFT increases, right?
Yeah.
Now, what has started happening is that a company called, I think the name of the company is called Human IPO. And it's taken the human and IPO, and as in initial public offering or listing on a stock exchange, and joined them together. And what they started doing is they've started, you know, taking, allowing for people to list themselves on the human exchange. So imagine right now, Pele is available on the human IPO platform. He's listed on the exchange, and you can buy shares in Pele. And as his value increases, as he does better as a person, your value, your whatever it is percentage that you bought increases. So for a single share, you can buy a share of Pele for $10,000. And imagine what happens in the world of sport in general. You know, an athlete is valued at so much for
blows up,
but over the course of an athlete's career, it's exponential. And it allows the fans, it's another way for fans to directly invest in their athletes. And it's especially for individual athletes who don't play team sports, I think it could be a huge game changer, massive game changer. But there's so many regulatory
it's, for one,
loopholes.
It blows my mind. I was about to say, it blows my mind for myself to just start understanding this place. But it talks to that whole athlete superpower. You know, we see it. We see athletes investing in themselves. We see LeBron James starting companies, Caster Semenya started an agency. So it's this whole conversation around the athlete superpower and then athletes controlling a lot of their worth and assets and growing that. So now you've got a chance to tap into that as an individual and grow as the athlete grows. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing. For me, I started coming across NFTs about a year ago, and their different applications, because I've been interested in the Bitcoin ecosystem for a long time, and I always thought that there has to be a way for the value of an individual to be taken away from institutions and people, deciding on what your value
clubs
is.
And franchises.
If the community that supports you views you as valuable and they're willing to invest in you, I think that's much more of a true measure of value than, some guy is going to come to your club and evaluate you and say, no, based on your performance and blah, 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 we think you're worth this. What's the difference between that and you listing yourself on an exchange, and the community who actually interacts with you and watches you actually says, no, we think you're worth more. So we're going to pile into your value.
Put more.
And then obviously if you have a scandal or anything like that, your value drops because people might sell their shares, but it's
100%.
It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting. I spoke to someone who said it was sort of like slavery, and I
don't think quite, but
it's a weird, wonderful way of investing in athletes, and I think that athletes are gonna jump on this like so fast because there's no other way for them right now, apart from sneaker or merchandise and blah blah blah. But even then, that doesn't really support the athlete directly. It usually supports the team or whatever that they play for. but this is a way that you can directly put money into an athlete's pocket and
100%.
skyrocket their value. And yeah, anyway, wrapping it up, we will see you guys again next week. We're hopefully going to touch on some more sports business related issues while we try and sort out our interviews and try and bring back the interviews again as well. But yeah, comment, like, subscribe, check us out on Twitter, Cash and Sport, @Sanani Mangisa, and we will see you guys again soon.